anything super duper or anything like that. I'm sure everybody in here, or at least most of you, could easily do what I'm doing, or what I'm going to show you that I did. This is just my interpretation of a picture of the buildings, a couple of the buildings at Fort Churchill at sunset. Now there's a lot of, how many of you have been out to Fort Churchill? Just a show of hands. Actually, I love Fort Churchill, and that's why Neil gave me so much crap last time, because I'm always suggesting that we go out to Fort Churchill. Most of my pictures at Fort Churchill are wide open pictures, big pictures, but there's some of the Nevada photographers that like to get very creative, and they'll shoot pictures of a window, through another window with a building in the background. And Marie Nygren has done a lot of those, Robert Peterson has done a lot of those, and I strongly suggest you look at their photos to see some different and unusual and creative pictures at Fort Churchill. But this is, let's see if I can get this to work. There we go. This is a picture I took earlier this year of a couple of the buildings on the west side, the west line of the buildings out there. And this is what I started with. Now, this was an HDR picture. It wasn't intended to be an HDR picture, but I had set my camera to auto bracketing, and it came out that way. Now this is already with some of the processing, and by the way, I do like and use Lightroom. This was done in Lightroom. Dennis, quiet. This was done in Lightroom. So when I got the picture on my computer screen, I saw this, and I saw the possibility that this would make a nice silhouette picture. But clearly, there's way too much sky compared to the buildings and the layers of mountains in the background to make this really an impactful picture. So what I wanted to do was to try to crop it into a picture that would be more presentable. And whenever I crop pictures, or not whenever, but most of the time when I do my cropping, I start with a 16:9 aspect ratio, because 16:9 aspect ratios are what are in most computer monitors and are what in HD TV. And I suspect that the reason for that is it's a pleasing to the eye ratio when you look at it. So the first thing I did was crop this down to 16:9, and that's where I got to this image. And I got the layers of the layers of the mountains came out a little better, and the silhouette of the buildings came out a little better. But still, way too much sky to make this an impactful picture. So I then went down and tried a couple of different ratios. So I went to 3:1. So now we're starting to get to where I want to be. The layers of the mountains are more impactful. They're more a larger percentage of the frame size is taken up by the mountains and by the buildings, and with the yellow sky in the background. But I don't like pure silhouettes that much, because in this picture we have so much of this dark in here, and it uses up too much of the screen size. Now, I'm sure a lot of you will disagree with me, but I'd like to get a little bit of foreground detail in pictures like this. So what I did is use my favorite slider in Lightroom, which is also in Adobe Camera Raw, the shadow slider, moved it to the right a little bit to bring in some of the detail of the foreground. I didn't accentuate the foreground. I just did it enough so that you can get some. Thank you. You don't want me to start over, I hope. So let's just switch back and forth.
Keep closer to the microphone.
All right, if you insist.
There you go.
Okay. I want to be able to see the picture. So anyway, back and forth, you can see that there's quite a bit of difference. I like the foreground detail in this picture because it gives the picture a lot more depth. The other thing it does, which you can't really notice with the slide and with the projection, But if you looked at this on the computer, you would see that there's a little bit more depth into the buildings themselves. When you go back to here, the buildings are just pure silhouetted, and there's really no detail, there's no depth. In this view, you get a little more depth, and you get a little more light coming through of the mountains in the background as well. So, just a quick survey. How many people prefer, let's call this image number 1 to image number 2? Image number 1. All right, there's a few. Image number 2. I guess I did well then. I'm using this as just a forum to figure out which of these ones I want to print. Thank you all. The other thing is that I like to do with pictures like this where there is a silhouetted subject matter is to convert to black and white. And I also use Silver Efex Pro to convert from color to black and white. So I converted this to black and white, but I wasn't really as happy with all of that foreground detail. Black and white, as Kristen pointed out, is a more artistic image form, than a color image is. So when I switched to, converted to black and white, I went from this to this. I went back to the pure silhouette. And I think in black and white, I think that the pure silhouette works better than this. Again, we'll call this image 1 with the detail. Image 2 is the pure silhouette. How many people prefer image 1? Well, there's a few.
I would crop, if it were mine, I would crop that about, go back to the next black and white.
Well, I'll get there in a second.
Okay, then I won't comment on it.
One of the things that you may or may not have noticed, when I switched to the black and white with the pure silhouette, I also recropped. If you look at this pure silhouette in the color, there's a lot of wasted space here. And as Kristen pointed out, one of the compositional elements is balance. And I didn't feel that this was balanced well with the pure silhouette. So what I did, when I went to the black and white, I recropped it to put a little more. There we go. Okay. I put a little more sky in and took a little bit of this black out. And I think the balance is better. At least that's, again, in my opinion. So now, your comment about the black and white?
Okay, now go back to the one with the sagebrush in it.
Okay.
If I were cropping it, I would come into the bottom and take that low white sagebrush out right in front. And right there, and narrow it up to there.
Okay, well, I kind of did that, but I didn't do it as much as you would probably have done. Are you saying you would have kept the detail in, just taken out the...
I would have cut that piece down where you had your red cursor. I'd have taken that out.
You mean down
white
here?
right there.
Okay, well, that's, like I said, this is just my personal take on this image. And everybody will have their own ideas, and I certainly respect that. But going back to this image, finally, whenever I do a black and white, I always like to think about other monochrome possibilities, including sepia tones. And so I took this one more step, and I put it into a sepia tone image. And I kind of like the sepia tone better on this image than the pure black and white. Primarily because it's a Western view, and the sepia tone has kind of a Western flavor to it. But again, I'll ask for your opinion one more time. Who prefers the black and white over the sepia tone? Black and white? Okay. Sepia tone? Yeah. God, I did really well. Anyway, that's it. That's it. I probably don't have any ability to answer any questions. But if you have any,
I have a question.
yes.
How much this is for you or any of the presenters, how much do you, seems like you have a lot of control over your image between the camera and the computer and the applications, but how much control do you lose when you go to print? Or how much does it change? For instance, does it look really different on the screen that you're showing us right now? Will it look really different when it's printed, depending on where you have it printed or if you print it yourself?
Well, I think probably Dennis can answer that question better than I can, because I don't print my own images, and I'm not a printer.
I mean, how much
If
control do you
it's
have?
for printing off of your computer, first, there's a whole, this is a big question. So the short point, make sure your monitor is calibrated. Make sure that your monitor is exactly what the printer is seeing. Then for somebody who is just starting into it, I would not print my own. I would go to somebody like Hunter at Pixels and Ink and he will talk to you. He will sit and look at it and say, this is what you gave me. Take your stick in, this is what you gave me. This is what I see on my computer. This is what you're going to print. And you can say, oh, that's not going to work. I don't like it that way. It doesn't look right. It does look right, whatever it may be. Or he might even be able to help. The other thing, and I'll just suggest this off the bat, is there's a place called Bay Photo Labs. And Bay Photo Labs has 2 or 3 different systems for printing. One's called